Eminem's Journey Through Time. It was an ordinary evening when Marshall Mathers, better known as Eminem, found himself sitting alone in his studio. Surrounded by old-school beats and the glow of computer screens, his thoughts drifted. Music had always been his outlet, his way of expressing the pain, the struggle, and the triumphs of life. But tonight, something felt different. The energy in the room was heavier, almost magical. As the clock ticked past midnight, the air seemed to hum, and the glow of the lights flickered. Then, without warning, the world around him began to shift. His surroundings warped like the screen of an old television, flickering and blurring before his eyes. The familiar hum of the city disappeared, and when he blinked, he was no longer sitting in his studio. Instead, he found himself standing in the middle of a dusty dirt road, surrounded by carts pulled by horses and people dressed in simple, old-fashioned clothing. Eminem rubbed his eyes. Was he hallucinating? Had he taken something? But the scene around him was far too vivid, too real. "Where the hell am I?" Eminem muttered under his breath. The sounds of horses neighing and townsfolk talking in a strange, unfamiliar language filled the air. Buildings made of stone and wood stood before him, their design ancient and rustic. People walked by him, staring at his modern clothes with confusion. He looked down at himself. His hoodie, jeans, and sneakers stood out like a sore thumb. It was clear he had traveled far back in time. "Is this a dream?" he whispered, trying to steady himself. He wandered through the unfamiliar village, his feet dragging as he tried to make sense of what was happening. He passed markets where people were selling grains, meats, and handmade goods. The air was thick with the smell of wood, smoke, and fresh bread. The further he walked, the more he realized how disconnected the world around him was from the one he had left behind. Finally, he found himself in the village square. People were gathered, chatting excitedly. He overheard a conversation between two women. "It's the harvest festival tomorrow," one woman said, her voice laced with excitement. "The village will celebrate with music, dancing, and tales of our ancestors." Music, Eminem thought to himself. This could be his way in. Music had always been a universal language, a way to connect people across time and space. But this music, it sounded so primitive. It was nothing like the beats he was used to. It was all drumming, flutes, and simple string instruments. There was no rhythm to it, no depth. It was more like a chant. Curious, Eminem decided to stay and watch the festivities unfold. As the day passed, he noticed that the villagers were preparing for their music by playing traditional instruments. Their melodies were beautiful, but there was something missing, a certain energy. There were no words to tell the stories, no complexity to the sound. He realized they had no idea what they were missing. The night before the festival, Eminem found himself sitting on a wooden bench at the edge of the square. He was deep in thought. He had been a part of the music scene for so long, creating, performing, and breaking barriers with his craft. But what if this world, this ancient world, could experience the power of the music he had created? What if he could show them how music could bring people together, speak to their souls, and change the course of their lives? Suddenly, an idea struck him. He had to do it. He had to show them the power of rap. He stood up with renewed determination, heading straight for the center of the square. The villagers looked up in surprise as he walked through the crowd. "Hey!" Eminem shouted, raising his hand to get their attention. The noise died down, and all eyes were on him. "You've got rhythm, but you're missing something. You need lyrics. You need rap." The villagers exchanged confused looks. "What is rap?" a man with a thick beard asked. Eminem grinned. "Rap is a way to tell stories, to express your pain and your joy. It's a way to speak your truth to the world, but with beats and words." The villagers still looked skeptical, unsure of what he was talking about. But Eminem wasn't one to back down. He grabbed a drumstick from a nearby table and tapped it rhythmically on a wooden crate. He started to build a beat, letting the rhythm bounce through the square. It was fast, sharp, and distinct. People began to gather around. Their curiosity piqued. With the beat pulsing in the background, Eminem began to rap, his words flowing with the precision of someone who had spent years perfecting his craft. The crowd fell silent, hanging on every word. "I come from a place where the struggle's real, where life's a battle, but you gotta heal. Through pain and loss, we rise again, find our strength, and push through the pain. His words cut through the air like a blade. The crowd was stunned. Some of them didn't understand the language, but they could feel the emotion in his voice. They could sense the power of his words, even if they had never heard anything like it before. The beat filled the square, and Eminem continued, spitting verses that spoke of struggle, survival, and resilience. He rapped about his upbringing, about the fight for a better life, and the pain of seeing the world from the bottom up. When he finished, the square erupted in applause. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering, their faces wide with amazement. They had never heard anything like this before. This was music, but it was something more. It was an experience. Over the next few days, Eminem worked with the villagers to teach them the art of rap. He showed them how to create a beat, how to flow with words, and how to turn their personal stories into lyrics that would move others. The villagers, who had always used music to express joy and sorrow in simple terms, began to see it through a new lens. They were quick learners, their faces lighting up as they began to rap their own verses. Eminem spent hours with them, watching as they started to embrace the power of their own voices. They rapped about their ancestors, their struggles, their victories, and their losses. It wasn't just music anymore. It was an outlet for their deepest emotions, a form of communication that transcended time. The villagers didn't just use rap during the harvest festival. They began to use it for everything. When they had a wedding, when they mourned a loss, when they celebrated a victory, they rapped to commemorate their past and to express their hopes for the future. The village square became a place of constant creation, where people gathered to tell stories, battle and rap, and build a community based on shared experiences. Weeks passed, and Eminem began to feel the pull of time once again. He knew that his journey was coming to an end. The energy that had brought him to this place was fading. Before he left, he wanted to leave the villagers with something they would never forget. One last time, he called the villagers together in the square. They gathered around him, eager to hear what he had to say. "Listen up," Eminem said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Music is a gift. It's not just about the beats or the words. It's about what it can do for your soul. Music can heal, it can inspire, and it can change the world. Don't ever stop using it. Keep rapping, keep singing, keep creating. The world needs to hear your voices." As the villagers nodded, taking his words to heart, Eminem felt the familiar pull again. The world around him began to blur, the sounds of the village fading as he was pulled back to his time. When he opened his eyes, he was back in his studio. The lights were back on, the music was playing, and everything felt normal again. But something had changed. Eminem sat back in his chair, a small smile tugging at his lips. He knew that, in some way, he had altered history. He had introduced rap to a world that had never known it, and he had changed the course of their music forever. And somewhere, deep in the past, people were still rapping,